serving you a dose of wisdom and humor with a dash of radiance. Welcome to Biscuits and Sunshine with your hosts, Callie and Landra. Hey y'all, we're so excited to be with you today. I'm Callie.
And I'm Landra. It makes me hella happy to have you here with us. We're getting into the swing of things with Biscuit and Sunshine. For those of you just joining us, we're two women who met randomly as adults and formed an almost instant friendship. Besides sharing the same birthday, we also share a lot of other characteristics and dreams.
Honestly, who would have actually thought that was possible? To stumble into something deep and authentic and genuine, a friendship like this? At our age? Ha! I'm all the time thinking how lucky I am to have met other women who really kind of understand my soul, and as an adult, no less. It's better than I could have ever expected.
Our independent moves here provided us with really an inflection point in our lives. And yeah, it's so interesting. It's like, in a way, it's like I see it, and I know you do too, as like see it as a next evolution of ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah, moving not only to another country, it's a good time to, this is during a pandemic, to take stock into really what's most authentic and genuine to us, and what maybe do we want to leave behind from where we came from.
Sometimes we always talk about this, but sometimes we're not really sure what is me and what is an idea from someone else. Am I doing this because it was always expected of me? Am I doing this because it really lights me up inside? Or am I doing this because it was just something I was good at and I fell into it? I think this move for both of us and the change in lifestyle and culture has given us the opportunity to really sort of think through those things.
Absolutely. And I was just thinking about, there's so many times, especially when you're trying to find friendships, and expand your circle when you are like the new person. It's an interesting opportunity to really be intentional about what you share. There's like a certain vulnerability in it. And, I think back to, again, you can't help it, like compare and contrast where you came from and, what you notice about in this new place you're living. But in America, there's a lot of times I'd be like, hi, I'm Landra, and like immediately launch into my career. Or if I didn't share that, people are like, so what do you do? That's usually the first question, and how refreshing it's been to come here. And it's more of like, who are you? Or like, when did you move here? And it's just like the questions kind of take all different directions. But it is an interesting time, at least for me in my career. I have done so much. So my career predominantly, I studied HR and business in school. That's what I did for about 20 years before launching my own company in HR. And so I've done that. And then I've also have been a teacher of mindfulness and meditation and facilitation as well. And I've done a lot of things. And so I really took this point of kind of a pause to say, all right, I've done so much, but what is it that I really want to do? And I also noticed that I'm really good at attuning to and creating programs and things to what other people need. And that's great. Like I probably still would have to do some of that. Obviously, I got to pay those bills. But, there is a part where I'm like, okay, but again, what lights me up? Like kind of what you said earlier.
It's recognize it. It's a privilege to even have the chance to ask that question.
Absolutely.
But it's such an important question. It's such an important question for people to have the chance to ask themselves. Because I think it is a question that then informs all of the other decisions that you can make. And you want those decisions. You want the things that you're doing in life to be authentic. I remember I was home in the U.S. over Christmas, and my brother and I caught up. We were getting lunch, and he asked me, so what's the biggest difference between the life you had here and the life you have there? And there's all of the obvious, like I don't have a car, I work from home all exclusively now. I do all these things. I go to the sea as often as I can. But for me, the biggest change is that I feel the life I have now is authentic to me. Before, I felt like the life I was living, it was like the life I was living and then the life that made me happy, and those two never met. And so here I feel like I am really kind of walking a path that's authentic to myself. I'm super grateful for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of decisions that went into yeah, all the things you mentioned about the type of work you're doing and where you chose to live and
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, and it really, gets me thinking about not that only we're in a new season of our lives, but thinking about, here it is, it's April, and it's springtime, and spring, just inherently brings up, new beginnings and hope and renewal. And I even think back to my husband and I, when we chose to get married, I was like, I want it to be in spring. I think April is a good month. And it was intentionally because of that. It was like this new regeneration and this renewal in my life. So I think about that. And for me too, I think I mentioned this to you and you might have already said it, is like, being so aware of the change of seasons that happen
Mhm.
here in Greece. Before moving here, I mentioned living in Northern California. Specifically, we were living in San Francisco, and it is such a unique space in so many ways, but it's a microclimate. And what was always confusing to me in my body, especially if you just like didn't leave San Francisco, you can experience a hot summer day in January. And then it's July, and then here comes the fog, and you're in your sweaters. Like, I always had the same kind of closet in the sense that, like, I never really had a big summer wardrobe, and I always had a lot of sweaters and a lot of scarves, and if it was warm out, I would always make sure if I left the house, I had an extra sweater with me, and it was funny moving here, it's like, if it's warm, it's gonna be warm, and so I
Very
had a little bit
warm.
of that, like, "Oh, I don't know if I trust the season."
I like this sort of living more seasonally. I mentioned earlier I don't have a car. So I feel the seasons more because I'm walking everywhere. Even if I'm walking to the metro or to a bus stop, I am very aware of whether it's raining, whether it's cold, whether it's hot. And I kind of like that. I feel like it grounds me more in this sort of real experience because, okay, not to sound uber philosophical, like I'm not one with the planet. But if you are so able to control your environment and never feel a change in temperature, never have the outside come in or the inside go out, it's like constantly living at a homeostasis and you never feel the extremes. So how do you appreciate the comfort of every day?
Mm,
Spring in Greece to me is magical. Everything starts to open. I think honestly too from a travel perspective, I think Greeks themselves, when you think about we're a very tourism-based economy and the summer season is a very big deal, but it's also a very hot season in Greece. So I think when we come out of winter, we as a people, as a Greek people, are opening as well. And I think it's one of the best times to travel in Greece because people are excited for the
oh,
season.
yeah.
People are ready for the tourists to come. Maybe they're a little nicer. Maybe they have a little bit more patience.
Yes.
But I see the opening of everything, opening of stores, opening of cafes, opening of personality, opening of
Mm.
flowers, opening of weather, all these things. I'm acutely aware of it living in Greece.
Yeah, yeah, I feel that. There's a hill not too far from my house, Lekavitos. It's actually the hill that's quite, I don't even know the difference, but quite a lot higher than the Acropolis.
Mhm.
So when you get up to the top, the Acropolis actually looks so tiny.
It does. You're like, "Oh, okay."
And I love going up there this time of year, as we're recording this, we're still in mid-February. It's really green from all the rain, but my favorite time is April because you start to see the wildflowers emerging, and you see the landscape change. And of course, like you said, the dead heat of summer, whoo, everything's looking dry because it gets scorched. But, the other thing I really love, and I was doing this in San Francisco, but I'm doing it a lot more living here, is going and shopping the farmer's market,
Mhm.
what they call the laiki. And I just love it, not only from a community perspective, I have my egg guy, the avga guy, I have the Milo, the apple guy, the portocali, the orange lady. It's so cute. The same people the vendors I choose to build a relationship with and go back to. But what is interesting, those things I mentioned are pretty staple, but it's my carpuzzi guy that has
Mhm.
the watermelon
Or
and
the
in
pears.
summer, and then that guy flips when it's fall into rodi, into
Uh-huh.
pomegranate. And so it's interesting, you start to see, not everything is available throughout the entire year. Apples and oranges, as I mentioned, yeah, for the most part, and eggs, of course. But you do start to see the seasonality of the foods change, and that obviously impacts then the way that I'm eating. And there's something to be said for savoring when you know there's only a certain amount of months or time kind of limitations. And then there's also something kind of like a sweet, like, oh, I miss that.
Oh yeah, the taste of a tomato in summer is like biting into a brief moment of sunshine to me. And I realize that I my body feels so much better when I'm able to get that act like that. I eat a lot of tomato cucumber salads in the summer. It's like my staple sort of
Hmm.
lunch. A little feta cheese, maybe I get a chicken souvlaki and put it on top. In the winter, I don't do that because things don't taste the same. And I love winter vegetables, don't get me wrong. I like winter foods, but it's heavier food, and it's already a season that feels a little heavy emotionally for me. And so I find myself really having to continually say, it's just a season. Winter is just a season. And like the sun and the tomatoes and everything's going to come back. And yeah, sure, sometimes it's a little depressing. I'm not going to lie. Like the seasonal depression really got me this year. That's a whole nother
Yeah.
story in and of itself. But I know that it will end. What seasons happen 4 times a year. And we're
Hmm.
blessed to live in a place that you do feel the seasons, even though everyone thinks Greece is sunny and warm year round. We do get snow here, even in Athens. They get snow sometimes on the islands. Like, there is a cyclical nature to things, and it's a really nice reminder that even the less joyful months, for me personally, those too will end. And the spring will come, and the flowers will open, and the rain comes, and then the heat comes, and I'm tired of the heat, and then I like the fall. It is life.
Yeah.
It is life, and I don't know. I feel like I'm a broken record. I'm so grateful. I love life. But truly, I like being able to feel sort of connected to the place that I'm living in.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. And just and being noticing the cycles that come with it, like noticing, like you said, like that low feeling when you're like, ugh, but then also knowing that it's like that awareness of like that's just how it is right now. It will shift and change. And I find that, the summer, like I laughed when I moved here because I'm like, summer. And then I hit like because I've never lived in a place that's so humid.
Oh, yeah.
And so now experiencing those like hot humid summers, I'm like, okay, careful what you wish for. But, it does bring, so much more joy to, like, what summer is because I know I've had the opposite effect, the opposite side of it.
Well, I could tell you all about humidity growing up in the South. Ooh, baby. We have, I feel like winter is humid and summer is humid and everything is humid in Alabama.
Ooh.
And I love when people here complain about humidity because it's like nowhere near the humidity that we have back home.
Uh-huh.
But it's interesting because I would wear the same clothes year round. Add a jacket, take off a jacket, but I'm generally wearing jeans or pants to the office. Here, there's no way I can survive wearing winter clothes in summer and summer clothes in winter. I need that change.
Yep.
And because, from a space perspective, we don't have the largest closets here in Greece, we do a lot of flipping closets.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I admittedly didn't flip my closet to winter until February because, again, seasonal depression. I didn't do anything in the month of January. But you flip your closet. And in some ways, that's really nice because you're like, oh, I forgot I had these pants. Oh, I forgot I had
Uh-huh.
this jacket. It's like shopping in your own closet again. And then summer rolls around and you flip again and you think, oh man, I remember I bought this bathing suit when we were on the island of Idra. It was such a great memory. It's these moments that being able to experience a different way of living, you realize that there's such beauty in being able to take those tiny little seconds and go, oh yeah, I'm really grateful for that. Whereas if I have everything at my disposal, like tomatoes, like strawberries, like carpuzzi watermelon,
Mhm.
if I have everything at my disposal all year long,
You take it for granted.
you take it for granted.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
So, I mean, we don't want this to become the We Love Living in Greece podcast, but in this moment, we talk about seasons, and especially when we talk about spring, it, where we are impacts so much our enjoyment of the change in season
Oh, yeah.
from a very physical perspective. But then, changing seasons also offer a very sort of emotional opportunity too, because we're 3 months now into the year. And I know we're not really resolution people. You and I both agree on this. Like setting these really big, lofty
Yeah.
goals at the beginning, it doesn't really feel authentic to us. But if you are, absolutely great. We're 3 months in. A change in season offers a nice little opportunity to sort of reflect on what's gone really well. Am I making progress on these goals? Do they even fit me anymore?
Mm.
Because a lot can happen in 3 months. Maybe you're not the same person that you were on January 1 or December 31. And so maybe using the seasons, since they do happen every 3 or so months, like using that change to check in with yourself
Yeah.
and see if you're living a life that feels still authentic to you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you and I think talked about, or at least I definitely shared with you like words that
Mm-hmm.
really inspire me throughout the year, kind of as like a compass, like coming back to that or like a filter, if you will. And what I will say is I think that yeah, the because it's not just the US, it's like life in the modern world.
Mm-hmm.
We're all about push forward, go 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 all the time, and I think the seasonalities I've really started to appreciate is that it is like you said a little bit of a pause, and I think it's important to look back and like a check-in like you said, like what needs to fall away, what's not really resonating, but also a celebration because I could be guilty of that, of like, okay, something I've accomplished and it's like, okay, what's the next thing? And like, oh my God, let's stop and celebrate and maybe
Mm-hmm.
even thank yourself for like, yes, like that was a big deal or that was a small thing, but it still like really felt good to me to do that. So doing that, I think is important before you kind of push forward. And I just think the cycles we mentioned so much, and I think, as I mentioned, I had lost my dad. So just thinking about death and life and kind of the cycles that always really are natural. And it isn't just about somebody dying, but really looking that there's always parts of us that are emerging and that we do maybe need to let go and grieve and let, kind of fall away. And so, or shed, I think that's another big word I've been using a lot. It's like
Mm-hmm.
the skin I need to kind of shed and let go of. So it's just a good point, regardless, to kind of stop and pause, look backwards, celebrate, leave behind what needs to stay behind, and then also look forward and move forward.
I read something recently about how important it is to know when to let go of something,
Ooh,
a
yeah.
job, a relationship, a habit, when things, okay, not only serve you, sounds somewhat selfish, but when things don't support you in the way that you need any longer. Career wise, I feel like we've all been there where this isn't a fit anymore, but for whatever reason, economically, things are not in the best place. Maybe you don't think you could get anything else. Maybe you don't know how to make a career change. Like, I think there are a lot of things that we in a modern society hold on to a little bit too long,
Yeah.
especially careers and friendships. I think we all have the friendships that we feel like we carry as one sided because this person has been with us since we were 12. And we want to maintain that. There's this sort of very nostalgic feeling around, oh, high school friends, elementary school friends, friends we grew up with. Another, cultural difference that I've noticed is that a lot of the Greek friends that I have do have these really lifelong friendships, which I think is so cool,
Mhm.
which I think is so great. You see these men who have really strong, robust friends, like group of friends, all male friends, and they go out for coffee together and they sit and they chat. I think that's so healthy. But sometimes those things do need to be shed. Those relationships do need to
Mhm.
sort of go by the wayside if they're not really supporting you in the direction that you're moving.
Yeah. I was also thinking that springtime, and as it relates back to like, there's any like, sort of like thinking about that here that's very Orthodox Christian. And I grew up going to going to church, Catholic, style. Don't really these days anymore, but just thinking about the time of like where there's this whole like giving something up, like kind
Mm-hmm.
of what you were saying, like letting something go. And I think a nice way that I've reframed that, when it is a moment in time, I need to let something go, instead of like being in resistance and like just kind of like white knuckling, like, okay, fine, I have to let it go. Cause it feels like restriction to me. What's been really helpful is like, okay, if I'm letting that go or giving that up, but what's it going to give me?
What can you make space for?
Yeah, like, I guess it's more of a regenerative kind of, like, excitement place for me, like,
Mm-hmm.
how will and, not only thinking like, Give me, give me, give me, what am I gonna get?" But it's like, "How will I feel?" I guess it kinda goes into that, like, thinking about whether it's like manifesting or thinking about like what's the next thing I want, not from a material perspective, want to feel or want to, have or an experience, just thinking about that is as a pathway for me that kind of lights me up versus like the other part just feels too sticky to like, oh, like it's, I think back to, being a child, if you're restricted, you're grounded. It just felt like I was stuck or like.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one thing that I think travel affords me. I just recently took a 10-day trip to Portugal, Morocco, and Spain. And one of the things that I was able to better articulate coming back, because I'd never been on the African continent before. And I've traveled very rarely in sort of like Muslim countries. And so, there are all these things that you think of. And Morocco blew me away. I mean, I told a friend, places like people leave an imprint on your heart. For me, Marrakesh, which is the only place I visited yet, really has just impacted me. So you're sick of hearing me talk about it. I know.
I know.
I think to experience things for me, I had no real expectation, and I tried to go empty. Like I didn't go with a full cup. I wanted there to be an impression left on me. And I feel like seasons allow you to do that too. I have an idea of what summer will be like, but I want to approach spring and summer with an empty cup
Mm.
so that I can be filled with whatever is waiting for me.
I really like that. Yeah. No, I'm not sick of hearing about it at all. If anything, I'm more intrigued and I'm like, it's always been on my bucket list to travel. And now I'm like,
We'll
I
go.
gotta go.
We'll go. Don't you worry.
Anything you're looking forward to this spring specifically?
I'm actually going back to the US for Easter, which is something, I mean, I think Easter and Christmas have always been holidays I spend with my family until I moved here. And then, flying back and forth is slightly expensive. But I was able to find a really good ticket. So I'm really excited to go home and spend Easter with my family, especially after experiencing Easter here. I feel like I'm relatively spiritual person. And so I thought about this earlier when you were talking about sort of the seasonality of things and the what comes next. Easter and this idea of resurrection and rebirth. The Orthodox approach it from Friday of the crucifixion to the resurrection on Sunday. It's a joyful sorrow
Mm.
because we know what comes next. You can't help but feel sad in the moment, but we know that there is greatness ahead. And I have always really liked this perspective, not just for the one experience of what it is, Easter and Pascha, but in life in general, when we experience sad things, when we go through seasons of death or seasons of barrenness, there is greatness ahead. Life is so full of wonder and joy. We just have to be ready for it and know
Mm.
that it exists and know that it is coming for us. I don't know. That's the way I approach things.
I love that. Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to go home in April. I'm going to Ireland as well to meet speaking of childhood friends, probably my longest, oldest long-term friend. Where we have created this really little beautiful pattern where she comes to Europe and we meet, and then she comes to Greece. And so we'll do some traveling together in Ireland where I've never been, and then we'll come back and I'll visit another island that I've never been to in Greece. And I love the Greek islands in
Mm.
spring.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
There's a whole different kind of experience. What
So
about you?
good. Yeah, I think it's getting out in the world again.
Amen.
Meaning that, I was back in California with my family at the end of, actually, I came back the week before Christmas. So I've just been kind of staying local, like really local, and kind of not being out in the world too much. So I am looking forward to, yeah, doing more in community and getting out and exploring.
You do have some big things coming up. I'm sure we'll talk about it at some point, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I, slight like friend pause moment here. It's always such a pleasure to watch your friends go through different seasons in life where they peak, like their peaks and valleys, right? In life. And when you see your friend starting to be able to reap the manifestations of all the work she's put in. Oh my gosh, it's so exciting. And I feel like you're in that phase where you've been working really hard. This idea of staying local and kind of focusing on setting yourself up for success. I feel like that success is already starting to bubble and starting to kind
Oh.
of manifest itself. And I'm really excited to continue to watch you
Aw.
take this journey.
I am renting an office space that I've
Yeah.
deemed my own creative feminine space. And yeah, that has given me a lot of renewed energy, even in this time of winter that we're in now. But yeah, it is. I think it's going to allow me to launch in spring, being able to do more speaking engagements and being and doing real life events with women, creating community here at a deeper level here, meaning in Athens. Of course, still online and a global community, but yeah, and some stuff is kind of I see it happening set in stone, and other stuff just I think there's an openness to who knows what's going to come.
It's always a moment of wonder to look out and think, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I've had a hand in all of this coming up. All of these things that are starting to blossom and grow. Okay, great, guys. Thank you for joining us on another episode. As always, a heartfelt thanks to our team for support, including the folks at Distant Spore Audio. Thank you again for joining us on another episode of Biscuits and Sunshine. It is a joy to always spend time together.
May you enter this week with a little spring in your step. This is your call to action to do an activity that, refreshes you, re-energizes, maybe refocuses you. And it could be in the form of spring cleaning, typically goes hand in hand in springtime, right? Maybe it's a walk in nature, time with friends. One that I'm loving lately, and I would urge you to do, is actually pick up the phone and talk with somebody, real live voice to voice. Anything else you'd add there, Kelly?
Refresh. Whatever you
Refresh.
do, let it be something that leaves you feeling ready to tackle whatever comes next.
Next week, we'll talk about love in all its forms. It'll definitely be one you don't want to miss.
If you love what we're serving up, be sure to subscribe and rate here. Also, follow us on Instagram. This is Biscuits and Sunshine with Callie and Landra.